Hey guys, it's Elaine. How you doing? What we're doing today is I'm going to talk a bit about adaptations, and in this case, it's adapting "And the Coming of Nighttime" from a film script, which I'm still working on, and originally to a comic, which I'm no longer working on, to a graphic novel, which I'm now working on. Now, what you're looking at here is one of the early versions of the way the screenplay opened, which was black background, blood red letters, and then they went from lycanthrope, and then the phone rings, hello, Dr. Anthony. On the other end, it's basically insanity, and then lycanthropy, there's a little bit more of a quick discussion with the guy on the other end of the phone, and then ending with the definition for the word werewolf, and then going on to a description of where and when this is happening. So hold on, we're going to let the film catch up with us just a really quick, because I don't want to keep making cuts in this video because it doesn't look right. And I am sorry if it's a little fuzzy. I didn't expect there to be this sense of fuzziness. Unless I'm editing this right now, so hopefully by the time you see it, it won't be fuzzy anymore. It will have calmed down by then. But anyway, let's keep going. This is, for those of you who don't know, "And the Coming of Nighttime" is a sci-fi thriller, horror thriller. The way Alien is a horror and a thriller. There is, yes, there is a monster involved, werewolves. But there's also things like intrigue and something of a mystery. People are dying. Werewolves get killed. Humans get killed. Who's doing all this killing? And how are we going to find out? And who's going to, stop it in the end? And what does it, and what about Naomi? But anyway, that was the look at the screenplay. Now we're going to take a quick look at the comic book, which I originally started. I did it in color and then took all the color out, and it looked horrible. So I did 2 issues, and neither of them was really good. So I stopped and took some time off to try to figure out where I was going wrong in the story. And then came back and decided to do it as a graphic novel. But right now, we're looking at how I went to adapting what you saw in the script to a comic. And so with the comic, because a comic or a graphic novel, these are visual, just like a script, film is, you're taking a written word and you're trying to add a visual context to it. And so what I started with was, as you can see here, it's still blurry, I don't know why. The definitions for lycanthropy, and werewolf are blood red letters in the back on a black background. And they then switch over. Oh, wait, hold on. We're going to make them bigger so you can get a better look at it. And that really doesn't make it any better. I don't know why this is the way it is. You're trying something simple, and the software just doesn't want to work with me. But anyway, as I was working on this, it realized for the comic, I needed to show what that initial inciting incident was, which is what happens at the lab. So I then created the scene for the lab and what happens at the lab, and which for the comic made more sense. And then, like I said, I'd stopped. And when I came back to the project and started working on the script again, I started working on a graphic novel because it was like, okay, no one wants to read the script. I pitched it. No one wants to hear it. I'm going to go back and do it as a graphic novel. And as I was working on a graphic novel and sitting down and realizing, oh, you know what? Part of why people didn't want to read the comic was the art sucked. And so what I need to do is work on my art and get better, because, who wants to read a comic book and the art sucks? And because so much of that is visual. And that was something I had to learn to work on. And as I started working on the visual, I also realized this, the graphic novel and the comic gave me the opportunity to expand the story in a way that the film script wouldn't, which is I was able to add a narration in where Josette talks about her childhood, about her Medea, how her mother was a little wonky, and so her Medea ends up raising her. But even so, it wasn't the easiest of things to go through. And, but I thought it allowed me to give backstory to Josette. It allowed her into a scene that technically she's not in. And her commentary gives a little depth to the scene that working in the film script, I felt didn't allow me, but that doesn't say something bad about the screenplay, because working on a screenplay allowed me to just is allowing me to tell that story in as tight a format as I can. Whereas, the graphic novel, the comic, and then now the graphic novel is allowing me to expand on that story. And as a result, it actually has brought me to expand on the screenplay a bit. So what we're seeing now is, and this is, the original was the PDF which you looked at. This is now Final Draft 11. And it's that opening scene, but it's more like what happened in the comic. And you'll see in a few minutes in the graphic novel where I decided to take part of that originally opening, where you have the definitions, but instead of the phone call, which does happen still, but it doesn't happen as soon, I decided to bring in that inciting incident at the lab. So you get to see the lab, you get to meet Henry Baker, you get to meet Stephen Durant, and you get to see a bit of their connection before we introduce Josette, who is actually our main character, but sometimes you have to have a prologue. I was trying to save myself a prologue, but then, as I worked on the graphic novel, the comic and the graphic novel, it was like, no, you need a prologue, girl. It's what the story requires. So this is a prologue, sort of. But we see that inciting incident, which is, he's in the lab. Baker looks like he's trying to talk him out of it. But Durant wants to go ahead and say, hey, you know what? The boy is doing well. And, we've got the council's approval. Let's go. We've gotten everything so great. We can do this. This is going to be just fine. Don't worry. And of course, as often happens with crazy scientists and their lab, things go wrong. Shit happens. And so now we're looking at the graphic novel, which is the most expanded version of this. And yeah, I tried to record this earlier and I had to explain that, I did this in Clip Studio Paint. I've always worked in Clip Studio Paint where the graphic novel is concerned, but for some reason, getting the new laptop has led Clip Studio Paint to think what I'm working on was done in some other software, not it, or an earlier version that doesn't correspond to what it is. But as you can see, there's the black background with the red letters, which are the definitions. And then I expanded on it because I thought I needed to add a little extra something in there that the opening of the screenplay did not allow. And so you're seeing here is the first page of a report written by the main character about why what you're about to see go down is going down, that this is that they're just not experimenting, but something called Project Starseed. And I don't want to give too much away, because if I give too much away, would you really want to buy the book if you already know the entire story? No, you don't. You want to be, you want to know enough to get you excited, but not so much that you're like, no. So, that then made a better, to me, for the graphic novel, this makes a better opening. But that's not going to come up in the screenplay, just because there's no way to do that in a screenplay without shutting it down at this point. This information will come out later in the screenplay than it is now in the graphic novel, just because it doesn't shut the story down in the graphic novel at this point, but it would shut it down in the screenplay. And there's Clip Studio Paint just making me crazy again, and then just like now with the comic and the screenplay, we open on the lab, which I love. I have to admit, when I started to work on the graphic novel and I realized, oh my goodness, I need a lab scene, and hello, my drafting skills improved. I had to look at a whole bunch of different pictures of different labs and stuff and go, okay, that works. What kind of color scheme do I want? And so, it was a way of taking what were originally just words on the page and giving them visual context, which is, I really think I'm probably going to keep working this way, which is to work on a screenplay, because that allows me to tell the story very tightly, and then move on to whatever the next medium is. Whereas in The Enslaved, it was going from the screenplay to the novella, and then doing the revision, which I think is a lot better. And if I ever get back to working on that screenplay, I'm going to have to make changes in it that, because I found that there were certain aspects of the story in the novella that came up that really need to make the screenplay. And I'm not going to tell you which, because that would be spoiling a lot of the story. But yeah, so as you saw, things changed, and then what changed visually in the graphic novel then changed in regards to how it got written out in the screenplay. And I find, for me, that is how adapting my work works. Now, for other writers, that's not necessarily going to be the case, because, usually somebody, you sell a script, somebody buys it, they decide, then maybe they decide they want to do it as a novella, or they make a deal with DC or Marvel or something, Dark Horse or somebody, and they decide they're going to do a version of it as a comic or a graphic novel. And so you then are pretty much laid in with what the script is, and you can only make changes according to then what the producer asks for. In this regard, because I am producing the graphic novel from my screenplay, or adapting it from my screenplay, and there are no outside entities involved, it gives me more freedom. I can actually sit down and say, oh, I'm going to do this, or oh, I'm going to do that, and this will affect the screenplay, or this won't affect the screenplay. Such as there's a scene in the graphic novel as I was working on it, and like I said, I added a narration for Josette, because she talks about, you get to find out she had a tough childhood. Her grandmother raised her. And one of the things that I wanted to point out was just, she was really, really poor. I call her a homegirl with a PhD. She grew up very, very poor. She was very, very smart, but she was very, very poor. And there is a point where she has to face down a werewolf. Baker decides to go all fang and furry on her, and it's not clear if he just wants to intimidate her or kill her. And to which her response is, instead of the, step back and start screaming, is she grabs him by the head, shoves her gun in the mouth, and says, "Bitch, please, my dad and I used to hunt dogs for food." That got put in the screenplay because in the graphic novel, while this is happening, she's talking about, it's a verbal inner narration. She is commenting about how when she was a little girl, her Medea and her Medea's boyfriend used to go hunting dogs, and they took her. And the first time, she didn't do so well against a dog, and that was the only time she ever went without dinner. And her ending statement is, because only a fool backs down from food. And so, and I realized that was a great thing for the graphic novel, because it gave a little extra depth and commentary on what she was going through at the moment, as well as giving you some of her backstory. But for the script, that was too much. So for the screenplay, I just put, "Bitch, please, Mama Dan and I used to hunt dogs for food back in the day." Same thing. Just, and that's what screenplays do. Screenplays often require you to tell as complete a story as you can in the quickest, shortest, tightest way possible. So, because with the script, it is more than what's going on just with the words. The actors aren't just standing there mouthing words at each other. They're citing dialogues, they're committing actions and stuff like that. And so, excuse me. Yeah, still got that cough. You have to when you're writing a screenplay, you have to take all of those things in consideration. And so you want to tell that story in its completion, but you want to tell it in a way that is tight, lean, I call it. And so, working in the comic and now the graphic novel allows me to keep a lean story, but also to add a little more to it, to give it a bit more depth. And as I'm working on these two in tandem, I'm finding the places where I can take some of that depth from the graphic novel and put it into the script, the film script. And without, excuse me, without feeling like I'm padding it up and making it fat. I prefer to write the earliest version and the screenplay version very, very tight if I can. My first couple of drafts are looser, but I like the end result to be tight, and then expand it into other media as I go. And that's it for today, because I'm running out of footage. Anyway, thank you for stopping by. If you like this, like, comment, share, subscribe, and come back next time. I'm not quite sure what I'm doing next time. I might talk about adapting the enslaved. I don't know. I might talk about something else. I might just do some more artwork.